Welcome to Biggest Spoilars, the destination for exclusive spoilers, latest updates.
General Hospital spoilers reveal that Michael Corinthos will fall into Alexis Davis's perjury trap, so he's about to get caught lying in the courtroom. During the week of January, Alexis will protest off her new strategy by questioning Dante Falconeri about sloppy police work and his defensive nature when it comes to his family. Alexis will make it feel like Dante sabotaged Sweats to make Michael and supported this rush to judgment regarding Willow Kane to shield his family. From there, it'll be time for step 2 of this plan, so Alexis will put Michael on the stage and get him to walk her through his whereabouts the night of the firing. Michael should stick to his fake justification since Jacinda Bracken assured him that she was alone in her suite the rest of the night. Michael is counting on no bone being suitable to falsify their bogus story about being together the entire evening. Alexis will set a perjury trap for Michael since thanks to Harrison Chase, she knows Jacinda was with Ezra Boyle that night. Since both Ezra and Jacinda are set to take the stage, there'll be 2 openings to expose the verity. Although Christina Corinthos Davis will push Jacinda to leave city while she still can, that plan won't dis out. Jacinda will stick around and give her evidence, which won't go well according to GH spoilers. It sounds like Jacinda's going to crack under pressure, especially if Ezra has formally admitted they were together during his own turn to swear. General Hospital spoilers point to Michael getting a shock, so that'll presumably come when he realizes Jacinda prevaricated to him. Michael may get updates on Jacinda's time with Ezra and reel over that news. Jacinda's deception will have consequences since Michael will perjure himself and make himself look shamefaced. Of course, Alexis can also paint Michael as a man with commodity to hide. Maybe Alexis will point out that Michael prevaricated to the jury, judge, and everyone differently in that courtroom. Alexis may argue that Michael could fluently be lying when he says he's not the shooter, too. Alexis may also catch Tracy in a taradiddle on the stage and frame it like this is just what the Quartermaine family does, they deceive and manipulate to get whatever they want. Although Willow is most probably the real malefactor, Michael's going to be the one under the most dubitation. In that courtroom soon enough, it's complicated after spending the night together. Cody made Molly flapjacks for breakfast. He asked if Molly felt he was a bad influence, and she replied that she was taking her family's advice to start living her life. Cody invited Molly to spend the day with him, but just as he picked her up in his arms to return to his bedroom upstairs, Felicia and James arrived for a writing assignment that Cody had forgotten about. Realizing what they'd intruded, Felicia offered to bring James back another time, but Molly claimed that the boy try out the new D-file he'd gotten for Christmas. Molly and Cody said goodbye to one another, but effects got awkward when James asked if Molly was Cody's gal, and he answered yes, but she replied no. Laura called upon Charlotte to babysit Ace, since the little boy's nurse was sick, allowing Laura to concentrate on an important meeting. Charlotte offered to take her kinsman to the domain, promising that they'd be impeccably safe with her security detail since she didn't believe her father would approach her in broad daylight anyway. After a discussion about Valentine, Laura ultimately agreed to let her grandkids head to the domain. Latterly, Ezra arrived and informed Laura that Sidwell wanted her to support installing pads on Ladle Island and the piers. Laura argued that it wasn't fair to the people of Port Charles for Sidwell to land his private copter on public land just because he didn't want to take the launch back and forth to the landmass. Innocent, Ezra munched on nuts as he replied that it was her job to vend it to the citizens. He advised Laura to just give their master what he wanted because she didn't want to see what Sidwell was like when he didn't get his way. At Bobby's, Marco and Sidwell bandied Willow's trial. Sidwell stated that if Willow were to be condemned of shooting Drew, the Solon would be useless on Capitol Hill because they'd no way get him re-elected. It would be indeed worse if Drew were impeached and condemned of blackmail, so they demanded a new contact in Washington to ensure their import businesses remained complete. Although he'd the original politicos under his thumb for now, Sidwell added, Laura didn't like being told what to do, so they had to make sure the mayor stayed in line by reminding her of what she stood to lose. Meanwhile, Jordan and Curtis woke up in bed together and pledged not to repeat the miscalculations that tore them piecemeal in the history. He was determined to prioritize not only their relationship, but the bone he'd with Trina as well. They headed to Bobby's, and she changed brief amenities with her master and his son before they settled into a table across the eatery. When Curtis asked what it was like to work for Sidwell, Jordan replied that it was the stylish job she'd ever had, but disclosed that she had her own docket, grounded on her reservations about his crime. Curtis told her that she didn't have to partake details with him, but offered to be there if she demanded him, and she responded that she was going to enjoy her work up until the moment that she took Sidwell down. Latterly, their discussion returned to their revivified relationship and how they'd kept secrets from each other in their marriage the first time around. Jordan wondered if their situation was any different now since they both had effects they couldn't tell the other. The Brace pledged to always have delicate exchanges. Indeed, if they'd rather avoid doing so outside, Sidwell was finishing up a phone call when Charlotte and Ace approached. She was surprised that the man knew who she and her kinsman were, and Sidwell told Charlotte that he knew her grandmother. When Marco came outdoors, Sidwell introduced him and explained that Charlotte formerly lived at Windmere with her father. Ace began to get restless, so Charlotte decided to take him home for his nap rather than treat him to a cookie like she'd planned. But before they left, Sidwell advised her not to take her eye off her kinsman for a moment since children that age loved to wander off. Scarified, Charlotte forced a smile as she thanked Sidwell for the tip, also seized Ace's hand and led him down. After Charlotte and Ace left, Sidwell told Marco that Charlotte was Valentine's son, and they could use a man with Valentine's bents on their current design. Marco refocused out that Valentine was a fugitive, but Sidwell was confident that they could use Charlotte to bring her father on board. Marco derived that this is why his pater had laid the charm on so thick with Charlotte, over until he made a veiled trouble against a child. Laughing, Sidwell said he'd only meant to shoot a communication to Mayor Collins. Formerly back at Laura's, Charlotte told her grandmother that she'd run into Mr. Sidwell while she was out with Ace, and he'd transferred his respects. When Laura pressed Charlotte further, she was scarified to hear that Sidwell had told Charlotte to keep an eye on Ace because children were reckless at that age and could be gone if you looked down for an instant. Having decided to simplify her legal strategy, Alexis gave Suzanne her updated substantiation list and explained to her adjunct how she was now planning to go after Michael as a single, presumptive suspect. Suzanne wondered if Alexis was taking her lead from the anonymous letter she'd entered, but the attorney snappily denied it, since the letter was unwarranted. Still, Alexis stated, she planned to do everything she could to prove what was in that letter was true. Latterly, Christina arrived to an empty living room and began reading one of the lines on the coffee table. When Alexis returned to the room, Christina blasted her mama for framing her family for a crime he didn't commit. Alexis reposted that, having examined the substantiation, she was confident that if the police had done their job, Michael would be the one on trial. As they continued to argue, Alexis said she had reason to believe Michael had been at Drew's house the night of the firing. Having seen the note in the brochure, Christina shot back that Drew may have been the bone who transferred the letter and claimed he was using Alexis to make sure Michael paid for Willow's crime. Alexis contended that it was her duty to make the strongest case she could to give reasonable mistrustfulness for Willow, not only for her customer but for Scout and Sam as well. Because Scout's well-being was at stake, Alexis advised Christina not to give Michael a heads-up about the new direction the case was taking. She added that Michael was an overgrown man and could take care of himself. The discussion left Christina torn between wanting to cover her family and her niece. Prepared for battle at Justine's office, she and Dante met about the corrupted business camera footage. When she questioned if anyone in the department could have tampered with the footage, he lowered that many days agone. He'd have said no, but now he wasn't ruling anything out. Justine conceded that losing the footage was a blow, and Alexis would use that substantiation gap to produce mistrustfulness for Willow and jut the crime on someone differently. Justine noted that indeed though Michael had been cleared, he was still a feasible suspect, but she also wanted to know what Curtis had met with Selena Wu about that night. Suzanne also arrived with Alexis's revised substantiation list, which included Dante, Ezra Boyle, Jacinda, Tracy, Michael, and Elizabeth. After Alexis's adjunct left, Justine groaned that, grounded on the new substantiation list, Alexis was going to suggest the PCPD was unseasonable in its focus on Willow as the shooter. Agreeing, Dante suspected that Alexis would charge him of not pursuing Michael as a feasible suspect since they were sisters. Justine reminded Dante to just be transparent and veracious during his evidence, and she'd expostulate if necessary. She added that Alexis dug her own grave by trying to throw Portia to the wolves on the off chance that it would save Willow, and the move had worked in their favor. When Dante asked if she was executing the case because it had been Anna's disquisition, or if she believed Willow was shamefaced, Justine replied that the beauty of the law was that it didn't count what either of them believed. They followed the letter of the law to present the data in the stylish possible way they could, while Alexis had to defend her customer to the stylish of her capability. And formerly both sides had their say-so, it would be over to the jury to decide the outgrowth. Read between the lines. Sonny invited Michael over and participated how he'd run into Justine at Café Sherry. Informing his son that the acting DA had her sights set on him, Sonny asked if Michael had been subpoenaed for the trial. Michael replied that he was formerly on Alexis's substantiation list, leading Sonny to conclude that both attorneys were going to set Michael up to say commodity he'd lament. Michael figured that Alexis was going to make a case that he was potentially the shooter. And Sonny prognosticated that during cross-examination, Justine would use Michael to establish Willow's questionable judgment. She'd trap him into saying bad effects about Isaac's wife, Sonny advised, and if Michael lashed out on the stage against Willow, true or not, that would ever impact Wiley and Amelia. Frustrated, Michael combated that he wanted his kiddies to know the verity about their mama, how she'd constantly put her requirements above theirs, and that he'd do anything to cover them. Anything? Sonny questioned pointedly. Angry, Michael roared that he knew what his father was insinuating. And in this script where he'd framed Willow, the final nail in the pall would be getting on the substantiation stand and making sure everyone knew what his partner was able of, so she'd be put down for good, because that was the only way his children would eventually be safe. So, what are you telling me? Sonny demanded to know. In response, Michael coolly stated that when I do eventually get on that stage, everything I say will be for the benefit of my children. Will Sidwell go after Ace to shoot a communication to Laura? Do you suppose that Christina will advise Michael at the expenditure of Scout? Should Molly and Cody clarify the status of their relationship? Partake your prognostications about GH in the commentary below. Port Charles is a city gripped by fear and uncertainty, and this week, the tension reaches new heights. Jason Morgan, ever vigilant and attuned to danger, stumbles upon a discovery that shakes him to his core. Anna Devane's gun, left in an unusual place, a stark clue that something is horribly wrong. The object, so small and familiar, carries with it an emotional weight far greater than its physical presence. It is proof that Anna has been taken, that her safety has been compromised, and that the shadow of danger is now closer than anyone had anticipated. From the moment Jason lifts the weapon, a chill courses through him. Encouraging words from allies, friends, and family, voices that usually provide solace and guidance, feel distant. He is alone in the moment, relying on instinct, experience, and the cold, unflinching logic that has guided him through countless crises. Every detail of the gun's placement, the dust around it, the slight scuff marks, each clue points toward a calculated act of kidnapping, a move designed not just to control Anna but to send a message to anyone who dares interfere. Jason's mind races as he pieces together the scenario. Anna, resourceful and experienced, would never leave her gun behind carelessly. The implication is clear: she has been overpowered, outmaneuvered, or taken by someone who knows her strengths and weaknesses. Sidwell immediately comes to mind, not because Jason wants to assume the worst, but because Sidwell's ruthlessness has already been proven, most recently in the brutal killing of Pascal. Encouraging words echo in Jason's mind, reminders to stay calm, to think strategically, to protect Anna, but beneath them lurks the unshakable terror of what she might be facing. Port Charles itself seems to respond to the discovery with heightened tension. Every shadow feels darker, every passerby more suspicious. Jason moves quickly, scanning the city with a mix of rage, fear, and determination. Angry threats are not just imagined, they feel real, pressing in on all sides. Sidwell or whoever orchestrated Anna's disappearance will not hesitate to punish, intimidate, or escalate the situation further if they sense resistance. Jason's every move now carries immense weight. Act too slowly, and Anna's life could be at risk; act too rashly, and he could walk into a trap. Meanwhile, the emotional stakes continue to escalate. Michael Corinthos, Sonny, and Laura Collins are drawn into the crisis as Jason communicates the gravity of the situation. Encouraging words are exchanged in hurried whispers. "We'll find her. She's strong. We can save her." But even the strongest morale is tempered by fear, because the clues, the gun, the methodical signs of kidnapping, point to someone who is both capable and merciless. Sidwell's recent actions, especially Pascal's death, have made it abundantly clear that no one who stands in his way escapes unscathed. The narrative quickly shifts to the investigation. Jason begins to map out Anna's recent movements, the people she interacted with, and the possible locations where she could be held. Each lead is fraught with danger. Encouraging words from allies, reminders to trust instincts, to rely on experience, serve as lifelines. Angry threats, both overt and implied, ripple through the city as Sidwell becomes aware that the news of Anna's disappearance might reach those who can challenge his power. Even minor details take on monumental importance. Every text, every email, every missed call is scrutinized. Jason knows that Anna, resourceful as she is, may have left behind subtle hints, breadcrumbs intended to guide him. The discovery of her gun is just the first clue. The task now is to interpret the signs before time runs out. Encouraging words remind him to stay vigilant, to move carefully, and to anticipate Sidwell's manipulations, but the weight of angry threats, both spoken and unspoken, presses relentlessly. Port Charles's allies react in their own ways. Laura Collins coordinates efforts, balancing strategic planning with emotional support. Sonny Corinthos focuses on mobilizing resources and allies, preparing for the possibility of violent confrontation. Michael Corinthos struggles with helplessness, torn between loyalty to Anna and the need to trust Jason's expertise. Each of these responses is guided by encouraging words, but the backdrop of fear and anger ensures that the city itself feels on edge. As Jason closes in on possible locations, the narrative tension builds to a fever pitch. Every room, every alleyway, every shadow could conceal Anna, or a trap. Sidwell's reach is extensive, and his previous actions demonstrate a willingness to escalate violence to achieve control. Angry threats are everywhere, sometimes implied in the positioning of guards or in the timing of events. Jason moves methodically, blending instinct with caution, as he tracks Anna's potential path to freedom. Meanwhile, the emotional impact on Anna is revealed in fragments, moments of resilience interspersed with fear. Even in captivity, her mind is alert, her resourcefulness intact. Encouraging words she once heard echo in her memory, bolstering her courage and determination. She understands that panic will be her enemy and strategy her ally. Every choice she makes is calculated to maximize survival and minimize detection, yet she is acutely aware that Sidwell's wrath is close, waiting, and lethal. The week unfolds as a high-stakes thriller, blending action, suspense, and emotional complexity. Jason's determination, Anna's resilience, and Sidwell's menace intersect in a series of tense encounters and close calls. Encouraging words provide hope and direction, while angry threats heighten the stakes and underscore the brutal consequences of failure. The narrative weaves between the perspectives of captor, rescuer, and ally, creating a tapestry of tension that keeps Port Charles, and its viewers, on edge. At one point, Jason finds a critical clue linked to Sidwell's recent movements, confirming his fears that Anna has been taken with deliberate intention, not by chance. The angry threats implied by Sidwell's prior behavior gain terrifying clarity. He is not merely capturing Anna for leverage, he is sending a message, asserting dominance, and punishing defiance. Encouraging words from friends and allies offer some measure of moral support, but even the strongest encouragement cannot fully offset the terror that Sidwell's actions provoke. The narrative crescendos as Jason formulates a rescue plan, integrating intelligence, strategy, and improvisation. The stakes are highest at this point, every decision could be the difference between life and death. Encouraging words, advice, reassurance, and moral grounding guide him, yet the presence of angry threats, traps, and the unpredictability of Sidwell's actions ensures that no plan is without peril. Meanwhile, Port Charles responds to the crisis with a mix of tension, action, and concern. Allies of Anna, including Jason's closest confidants, mobilize resources, gather intelligence, and prepare for confrontation. Encouraging words abound, messages of hope, determination, and belief in Anna's strength, but every movement is shadowed by the palpable threat of Sidwell's vengeance. As the search intensifies, Sidwell becomes increasingly agitated. His reaction to Anna's escape fuels a series of calculated, angry threats aimed at deterring interference and punishing anyone who challenges his authority. Pascal's murder earlier in the week has already demonstrated the lethal consequences of crossing him, and the city now understands that Sidwell is willing to escalate violence to achieve his goals. Anna's internal struggle, even while held captive, remains a core element of the story. She balances fear with determination, hope with pragmatism, and courage with caution. Encouraging words, both remembered and imagined, provide psychological sustenance. Angry threats, implicit in every interaction with her captors, serve as constant reminders of the stakes at hand. Every decision she makes is guided by survival instincts honed over decades, yet even her formidable skills are tested to the limit. The interplay between Jason's rescue efforts, Anna's resilience, and Sidwell's calculated rage drives the story toward its climactic tension. Every scene pulses with suspense, moral complexity, and the dynamic interplay of hope and fear. Encouraging words offer guidance, strengthen resolve, and maintain morale, while angry threats escalate stakes, provoke urgency, and keep viewers on edge. As the week concludes, Port Charles stands on the precipice of revelation. Jason's discovery of Anna's gun set the entire chain of events into motion, signaling both danger and hope. The rescue plan is in motion, alliances are solidifying, and Sidwell's wrath is both a looming threat and a driving force that propels the narrative forward. Encouraging words continue to offer light in the darkness, while angry threats remind everyone of the ever-present shadow of danger. This storyline, rich with suspense, action, and emotional complexity, exemplifies the essence of General Hospital's most compelling drama. It blends high-stakes action with moral dilemmas, personal courage with calculated strategy, and the eternal tension between hope and fear. Jason's discovery, Anna's peril, and Sidwell's violent reprisals converge to create a narrative baptism, one that tests loyalty, fortitude, and the limits of human resilience.